You know how to do that. Okay, so we're going to talk about solving quadratics using square roots. Normally, you set it equal to zero. You set an equation equal to 0 before you solve it. I'm doing this really fast now because I just forgot to turn the video on, so I'm catching up, right? And it better be working. That's all I can see. I think it is. And there are two exceptions to solving it by setting it equal to 0. The first one is by using square roots, and the second is a very, very famous process called completing the square. Amazing things have been created out of completing the square. You guys are going to get very, very good at completing the square. But that's not for today. That'll be for tomorrow. So for today, in the past, I have taught you how to solve this. X squared minus 25 equals 0. All right? I'm going to show you two ways to solve this. I'm going to write it again here. X squared minus 25 equals 0. Now, you already know this way. What do you see? What is x squared minus 25?
X plus 5.
Right, because it's the difference in two squares. So it's going to be x minus 5 times x plus 5 equals 0. Right? Make sure this is in your notes. So either x plus 5 equals 0 or x minus 5 equals 0 or x plus 5 equals 0. So if x minus 5 equals 0, then x is equal to positive 5, right? And if x plus 5 equals 0, then x is equal to negative 5. Okay? You all know that. That's nothing new. All right, so now we're going to see how you could solve the same thing using square roots. Okay? In this case, if I were going to use square roots, I don't want to take the square root of x squared minus 25. It would be a mess. There is not an easy answer to that. In fact, there is no answer to that. There's no perfect square to x squared minus 25. But let's say I do this. I add 25 to both sides. That gives me now x squared is equal to 25. Right? Yeah. So how would you find x? Right. What gets rid of a square? You square root it, right? So let's square root both sides. Okay. Now on this side we have an x. But on this side we have something different. We have what? A pie? A pie. That sounded like you said a pie. What? I'm interested. I love pies. You know? But yeah, a pie. But. So there's something you have to understand though. Up until this point, whenever we've been talking about square roots, when we said what is the square root of 4, we said it is 2. Because we've always assumed, and actually it is true, we as mathematicians, there's an understanding that you're choosing a number greater than 0. Right? So two numbers that that multiply together, two numbers that, a number that multiplied times itself equals 4. That would be 2. It's got to be greater than 0. So 2 is greater than 0. That's it. However, when you're in an equation like this and you're solving quadratics, that rule is suspended. So suddenly it's okay to have negative answers as well. For example, what two numbers that are negative what number times itself that's negative equals 4? Right, negative 2. And negative 2 times negative 2 equals 4 as well. So when you're solving quadratic equations, this is what you do. You do this little sign called plus or minus, and then you're going to say 5. That's really important. That plus or minus is really important. Really important. And notice, that's what we got here. X is either plus 5 or X is minus 5. Right? So, now that we've seen that, let's do a couple. And then we'll gradually make them a little harder. All right, so let's say we do I'll just write them in fairly easy. All right, what would that be? Right. So take the square root of both sides. X is equal to plus or minus 9. Right? Piece of cake, right? Really easy. All right. So let's do another one. Let's say I did, how about I did 4x squared equals 100. I'm sorry, 2x equals what? Okay, now, yes, but I'm going to want to know what x is. So what could I do first before I actually take square roots? Is there something I could do first? Divide by what? 4. By 4, right. So divide by 4, divide by 4, suddenly I have x squared is equal to 25, right? So now I'm going to take my square root, and I've got x is equal to plus or minus 5. Plus or minus 5. Right? Alright, now, we're slowly going to get harder and harder. Let's say I did this. 0 equals 36x squared minus 16. What would you do? So, yeah, I'd add 16 first, right? Add 16 first. So I have 16 is equal to 36x squared. Now, what can I do? I want an x squared really. Ideally, I want my x squared by itself. What would I do? Talk louder, whoever's talking.
Do you use the GCF or something?
Well,
I don't know.
well, how would you get x squared all by itself? I mean, just, yeah. Yeah, so let's try that for a second. Let's divide both sides by 36. Okay, so that means now we have x squared on this side is equal to 16 over 36. Now if I use my calculator, calculators always make things, interesting. I mean, they're easier, right, a lot of times. But let's say we don't have a calculator. And all we have is this. And now we have x squared is equal to that. And we want to know what x is equal to. We take the square root of both sides. Now, how could we take the square root of that? Beckett.
Square root of the top and that square root.
Yeah, because that's the same thing as the square root of 16 over the square root of 36. Right? So that's what x is. So what is the square root of 16?
4.
What's the square root of 36? 6. So I could say 4 6, which actually could be simplified as what? 2/3. That equals x. So my x is 2/3. Make sense? See what I did? Now, what if I gave you something like this? X squared minus 3 equals 0. And I'm asking you to solve this using square roots. What would you do? You're slowly getting harder, so that's making you think. Well, what would you do? Add 3, right? Add 3. Add 3. So we've got x squared is equal to 3. Now what would you do? Yeah. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. I forgot to do one thing.
Yeah.
Plus or minus. Sorry.
Yeah.
What am I doing? I broke the rules. Right? It's got to be plus or minus 2/3 down there for those of you who catch that. All right. So back to this. I'm sorry. What were you saying? Exactly. So look, we're going to take the square root of both sides. And so x now is equal to plus, you have to add this in. You have to add the plus or minus in front of the square root of 3. Really important. Really important. You with me so far? Make sense? So like you're so close to, I mean, once I teach completing the square, you're going to have no trouble because there's only one little extra aspect, but I'm not going to do that today. But this is all the foundation of completing the square. So I can erase this, right? I'm going to keep adding, keep doing a few more things. All right. Let's see. I did that. All right. Now is where it gets interesting. This is where it really relates to completing the square. What if I had something like this? What is x plus 5 times x plus 5? What? Say it again. Wait, say you first. No, it isn't.
Oh, yeah.
Because you'd have to FOIL, right? But how would you write it? Could you write that differently? X plus 5 times x plus 5. Without foiling it. What? I heard somebody say something. Isabel, I thought it was Isabel. What did you say? Well, so it wouldn't be x squared plus 25 because you're leaving out the outside and the inside, right? You're just doing first and last to get x squared plus 25. You're not doing the outside and the inside of FOIL, right? You'd have, if you were going to multiply it out, it'd be x squared, at first, x squared, outside plus 5x, inside plus 5x, outside plus 25. So 5x plus 5x is 10x. So it would be x squared plus 10x plus 25. But I don't want to do that. I want to square root things. Is this not the same thing as this? Yes? Isn't that the same thing? That's really useful to know. Okay, so watch. Now what would I do to solve this? Square both sides, because I've got square root. I can just square both sides, and I've got suddenly x plus 5 is equal to plus or minus 10. Okay? You with me? We're not done yet. But we're almost done. I want to know what x equals. So Lila, what would you do? Right. So you're going to have two answers, right? Tiana, you get this?
Yeah.
You're going to subtract. You're going to subtract 5 from both sides. So that means really x is either equal to negative 5 plus 10, or x is equal to negative 5 minus 10. You with me? See that? Since I'm subtracting 5 from plus or minus 10, it's going to be negative 5 plus 10 or negative 5 minus 10. Okay? So what's negative 5 plus 10? That's going to be 5. Negative 5 minus 10 is negative 15. So there are my two answers. X could be 5 or negative 15. All right. Last. All right, so let's say we had this. X minus 7 times x minus 7 equals, I don't know, 13. All right, so this one. So Tiana, how many? What do I do?
Okay. So you have to do this square root thing.
Yeah, but what I want to do first with this, rewrite it as, they're the same thing, right? X minus 7 to the, yes, equals 13. And now what? Square root. All right, square root. So now we have, what do I have here? When I square root this, I'll have what? Yes. That is like gold, you guys. You have no idea until you eventually experience this in completing the squared stuff. That is gold. You just got rid of x squared. So suddenly you got an x, you can solve for x. You've been solving for x for 2 years, for 3 years probably. Right? So it's really easy to solve for x. X minus 7 is equal to, yes, keep going, Tiana.
Plus minus
Yes.
13.
Square root of 13. Well, square root is just like if you have the square root of 16, what number times itself equals 16? 4 times itself. Right? But there is no square root of 13, right? There's no easy square root, simple square root. So we're going to leave it as the square root of 13. The only time you take it out is if it's a real square root, like square root of 16 or square root of 25, a perfect square. But if it's not a perfect square, you're going to leave it as a square root of 13, or whatever it is. Now what? Keep going. I want to know what x equals, not x minus 7.
X plus 7.
And a plus 7.
On that side, and then plus 7 on that side.
Yes.
And it's like x equals
7 plus or minus the square root of 13. That is your answer. That is how you will write it. Okay, that's your answer. There's only one more that I want to do. Make sense?
Yes.
Now, if you had to graph that, right? Remember, when you're solving for x, when you're solving, you're finding the roots, you're finding the zeros, which means you're finding where the parabola crosses what? The x-axis, right? So it crosses the x-axis right here at an easy spot. 7 plus the square root of 13. Where is that? I don't know. What I would need to know is what the square root of 13 is approximately. So I get out my calculator and I'd say, if I needed to know, usually I can leave it like this, but if they ask me to graph it, then I need to know where 7 plus the square root of 13 is, right? 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 4 is 16, so it's going to be 3, it's going to be 3 point something, right, would be the square root. So 7 plus 3 is 10, 10 point something, it's going to be a little over 10 something. You see what I mean? Right? You see what I'm doing? Right? I'm just sort of approximating, but if I had a calculator, I could see it's 3 point something, 3.2, 3.6, 3.6. So 10.6, at 10.6 approximately is where my dot would go for my finding of a zero, right, on the graph. But most of the time you can just leave it like this because you're not always asked to graph it. All right, we've got one more, right? How much time do I have?
1 more minute.
1 minute.
Okay, give me a minute and 30 seconds, okay? We got one last one to do. All right. What do you think? Oh, yeah. Okay. So what if I give you this? 3x plus 2 squared equals 2. Okay, shh, guys, I don't have much time. So we're going to do this really fast. What do I do first? Everybody. Square root both sides. I've got a perfect square here. So I square root both sides. So I now have 3x plus 2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 2. I want to know what? I don't want this 2 here, so I'm going to subtract the 2, right? Yes? Just like we did before. Subtract the 2. So now I have 3x is equal to plus or minus this. Excuse me. I have 3x is equal to negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2. Yes? Everybody's with me, right? This is just like we did before. Now look, I have 3x. I don't have x. I have 3x. I want to know what x is. So I'm going to divide by 3. Divide by 3. So that's my answer. X is negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 over 3. And that's my answer. And I would use, if I had to graph it, I would get out my calculator and I would figure out what is the approximate value of the square root of 2. And I would say negative 2 plus that divided by 3. That would be one of my answers. And then negative 3 minus that divided by 3. That would be another answer. Okay? That is it for the lecture. I have the homework.
I'm